answered anyway. Okay, so what we're going to do to begin with is introduce the lesson. The lesson today is 2-point perspective. Now, we always say things like, oh yeah, it's 3D, and 3D means that there's like there are 3 dimensions, and there are 3 points of perspective. One is going off to the left, one is going off to the right, and one is going down to the bottom or going up to the ceiling. If you were, let's say, a bird, and you were looking down at a big building, you would see that, not directly down, but at the building, you would see that the building would start off really, really big and then get smaller and smaller and smaller as it went down to the ground, because it's going further away from you, and that's perspective. And if you were standing in a field and you saw a cow, there might be another cow in the field further away. That cow would be smaller, not because it's a smaller cow, but because that cow, the smaller cow, is further away. And as we know, things get smaller as they get further away, and it doesn't matter how far away they are, they're going to get a little bit smaller. So we're going to do 2-point perspective, and that means that things are going to get smaller when they go away to the left or away to the right, and we're going to call these the points in which they vanish is going to be called the vanishing point. Okay, so the first thing I do to set up my page is I need to make 2 points. The point here, which is a little cross that you can barely see, I'm going to call this VP1, and that is vanishing point 1. Now everything going off in that direction is going to vanish to there, and then we're going to have another one over here called VP2, and everything vanishing in that direction will vanish at that point. Okay, now we're going to draw a matchbox, because a matchbox has got a little drawer in it. It's pretty old-fashioned, but it will show you some of the techniques that you would use. Now, to begin with, I'm going to draw the isometric. Now, we already know what the isometric is. I'm going to draw a very, very rough isometric view of our matchbox. Okay, so there's the draw. We're even going to draw the draw coming out. Draw the draw, yeah. And that's dark there, and a little bit dark there as the shadow. And of course, you can see that bottom there. So there's the isometric version. Now I'm going to quickly go over that in black pen just so you can see it. So that is the first thing we're going to draw, that part there. And then the second part we're going to draw is that drawer coming out of the matchbox. Okay. Alright, so red lines and blue lines. Now VP1 I'm going to do in red, and all my lines that I'm going to draw that go towards VP1 I'm going to draw in red. Now, so as you can see, the things pointing to VP1 are that line there, that line there, that line there, that line, and that line. And the things going to the blue line, that's going to be VP2, which is here. That is going to be that line, that line, that line, and that line. And they're going to go to VP2. And the things that I've just left black are just going straight down. Okay, so they're vertical lines. Okay, where do we start? Well, first of all, remember we're going to construct, so we're going to do light lines first. And I know that this is longer that way than it is that way. So in my page, I'm going to bring it a little bit further away from VP1, which is the red one, because I know the lines going to VP1, the red lines, are a little bit longer. So I'm going to need more space. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make a little dot there. And that is going to be that point there. Okay? So that point there is going to be that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a vertical line. I'll tell you what, I'll even label that 1. This is the first line I'm going to draw. I'm going to draw it now. I'm going to use a ruler. Of course, you don't need to use a ruler, but there's going to be a lot of lines here. Okay, so that line there is the first line I've drawn. And that line is that line. Alright, the second line is going to be that one there, number 2. Let's do an arrow to number 2. And then when I've done number 2, I'm actually going to do number 3 there. Now watch, this is how the vanishing points work. I knew I'd done that wrong. Right, don't worry about it. I have just drawn the line too long for my ruler. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to join the top of this line to vanishing point 1. Okay, and if you've got a longer ruler than I have, life will be very easy. And of course, I construct that line. That's a very, very faint line. It is not a figment of your imagination. That is a line there. And then the next line is going to go up there. Okay, so these two lines are these two lines. That's the second line I drew, the third line I drew, and they're going in that direction, which means they are going to VP1. And there's VP1 there. I'm going to do the same thing here, and that's a blue line there. And you can't see that blue line, so this would be line number 4, and I'm going to do line number 5, even though you can't even see line number 5. So there's line number 4, a very, very faint line there, and there's line number 5, very, very faint. It's okay, because you can't see it, it's okay, and that's why we're drawing it faint. Okay, the next part is you've got to choose a point where you want this line here and this line there. Okay, so I'm going to choose that point, and I reckon, well, it's got to be a bit long, so I'm going to go there. So that point there is that point there, and I'll do a little triangle so you know that that is what I just drawn. Okay, and now I'm going to choose that point there. Now that point there is about there, I reckon. Okay, because then it's longer than it is wider. Okay, and that point there, I'll do that as a square, and there's a little square icon there and a square icon there. And I didn't measure any of this, I made it up. In fact, you can't actually measure any of this because it's getting smaller. It's crazy. Okay, so there's my little square. I'm now going to draw, this is line number 6. Line number 6 again, you cannot see. It's an imaginary line here, and this is parallel to line number 1. I said parallel, and I meant I should draw it parallel as well. Okay, and there's the triangular line, and that is going to be line number 6. That is line number 7, and line number 7 you can draw quite dark because you are going to be able to see it. I've got to try and get this straight, otherwise if it's not straight it's going to look weird. It's already looking weird. Okay, so what I've got now is I've got my vertical line there, which is line number 7. I've got my vertical line there that I can't really see, and I'm just going to erase a little bit of that so it's a bit lighter. That is line number 6, and I've got line number 1. I've also got line number 2, line number 3, line number 4, and 4 and imaginary line number 5 there. All right, this line goes across, and that is a blue line, so therefore it has to go to vanishing point 2. So let's draw that line there. That is line number 8. Okay, and this line here, which is the top of the square line, is red. That's that line, and that has got to go to vanishing point 1. And there you go. That was line number 9. Now, some of you can already see that that is a box. Okay, now if you can't see this, if you're using Google Meet or anything like this, if you can't see this, if you go to those right at the very bottom of the screen, if you go to the 3 dots that are vertical and click that, click settings, click receive video. So you go to video, you go to receive video and choose high def. Some of you haven't done that. You might still be on standard definition, and it's going to be quite difficult for you to see that. Okay, so we've done the outside of the box. Right, now we're going to draw this part here, the draw. Okay, so the draw, even though it's smaller, follows the same principles. Those red lines got to go to VP1. Those blue lines got to go to VP2. All right, so if I draw the inside here, it's still got to go to VP2. So I'm just going to quickly map that line out there, and I'm using my pencil to pivot. You see? There's that line there. Then a vertical line there and a vertical line here. And that line is a little bit wider than that line because it's nearer. Right, so now that cross there, that's going to go to VP1. And of course, because I was stupid enough to choose the wrong ruler, that is difficult for me. So that goes there. That one, VP1, is going there. And I'm just going to choose an arbitrary point, so I'm just going to make up that point. That is as far as that is extending out. So that was the one I did then, and that was line number 10. That was line number 11. That was 10. That was 11. And then I drew that one, which is line number 12. Okay, well now I'm going to do 13, 14, 13, 14. 13 was the top one, and that of course is going to VP2, and I can reach that. And that one's also going to VP2, and I can reach that one. Now you can't just draw the line going up, because it depends on that point there. That point has to go back to VP1 and come out, and that point then is parallel and goes straight down. Okay, so that point there was line number 15, and that's a very small line there. And then I did that, and that is parallel to that. Now you can see, well, you can't see, but I can see that there should be a line there, the inside of the box, if it's empty, which it should be, because you shouldn't be playing with matches. And that line is going to go through there, and I'm going to do a construction line to prove that I can just cross over lines. Alright, so there's your matchbox. So the first part was construct. Now construct, as we said, is very, very light lines. This is the difficult part. What we're going to do is we're going to go over it with our black pen. Now the black pen, we've got to be very, very thoughtful, or as they say these days, mindful. Alright, so you're going to do this, you're going to think about what you are doing, because you don't want to put that line where it does not belong. That's the first line I'm doing. I'm not going further, I'm not going up, I'm not going this way. That is the line of the matchbox, and I do not draw any other line. Now, straight away, another bit of advice. I'm moving this ruler on top of an ink line. That sometimes smudges. Not so much these days, but it certainly used to. So what we can do, we can turn the ruler over. If you can sometimes see that that ruler there or that ruler there is sort of beveled or chamfered or beveled. Now if we turn it over, it means that when the pen is drawing across, if we turn it over, then the ruler doesn't touch the paper, and that means the ink cannot bleed underneath. So if you want, you can turn your ruler upside down to draw that line, or just wait for that line to dry. So that's another mindful line there, going straight across but no further. And then of course we've got this other one that goes to that vertical line. And now I'm going to copy that same process and draw that one, and I'm going to draw that one. Get a quick blow there, dry it out, and then I'm going to do my vertical line and my vertical line there. Okay, well that was pretty simple. I'm not going to draw the back of that line. I think if we remember, that was the invisible line 6. I'm not going to draw that, but I'm going to draw the start of it down to the tray, but no further. Okay, and some of you remember that I actually messed that line up. It was a bit funny angle, so now I've corrected that angle. And then there was also another invisible line 5, and I'm going to draw that to the tray and no further. Okay, right. Now I would actually probably be talking to myself anyway, even if I wasn't recording this, because by talking to yourself, you make sure you are getting it right. Okay, that line goes there, but no further, because that is the draw line, and the draw has now disappeared. And the same is going to happen for that top line. And of course, because as I'm firming, I'm also correcting some of those lines that I messed up earlier because of the shortness of that ruler. Right, now we're going to get to a tricky stage, because this is where some of people or myself might even make a mistake. We can see these lines. We're going to be able to see the next two lines. And this is the last line that we can see. And now the inside of that draw. Now the inside of the draw, you cannot see that area. That is hidden by that face. So, get my ruler ready. And draw and stop. And that is the inside of that draw. Okay, well that's basically it. That is your that's your matchbox. Well, what about the strike pad? the strike pad's going to be a little bit difficult because we want to draw a box inside that box, but we've got to abide by the rules. So we are going to use VP1 for this one, and we're going to draw that line there. Why did I not get a proper ruler? And that one there. Okay, so as you can see, that border there is getting smaller and smaller. That border there is getting smaller and smaller. This border here, I eyeball this one, is bigger. This border there is much smaller. In fact, it's so small, it might even just appear to be a double line, okay? Because it is going further and further away. Some of you are probably looking at yours and thinking, well, hang on, mine does not look like that. That might be because your vanishing points are either too far away or further away than mine, or they're too close or closer than mine. I personally prefer my vanishing points to be nice and close, and the reason is it makes the drawing look pretty weird and like a comic book. This one, they're quite far apart, so it looked okay. Some of you, when you drew that first line, if you drew it in the center of those two vanishing points, you wouldn't be able to see the top or the bottom. You'd only be able to see two lines coming at you. Like if you're standing at the corner of a street, you can see that wall and that wall, but you can't see the roof of the flat building, and you cannot see underneath it. Some of you may have drawn that line above the vanishing point, and of course then you can't see the top at all. You can only see underneath, like you were a mole in a hole. Okay, so there's my strike pad, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to cross hatch that. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then come down at a right angle to that 4. As you can see, that's very, very close. And when I do it here, it's got to be further apart. So there are rules, you see. There are rules all over the place. There are rules that things are getting smaller, and it's not just things, it's everything getting smaller. Alright, the next one. Now, old-fashioned matchboxes used to have a ship on them, and it was called like ship matches. And what we've got here is a boat with a couple of sails or whatever, and SHIP matches. Alright, now if we do that, we must again abide by those rules, and we're going to do this because some of you are going to need decoration on your projects. Okay, so that's my guidelines, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go here and there. That line is the same as that line, but that is smaller because it's further away. And then we will over. It's a little bit rough, that one, and that is there, but all I'm doing is just showing that things must get bigger. And then we've got our boat, and even our boat, even though the back end of the boat is bigger than the smaller end, than the front end, because we're drawing it in perspective, that is gonna be different. Okay, that's basically it. Now we can render. Now if we're rendering, again, we try and do light colors. Don't push at all. You can always go over it again. In fact, you can lay it up a few times until you're happy with that blend. So we're never going to do the first color the first time. It might take lots and lots of time. If you're very fortunate enough to have a photocopier in your house, you might want to photocopy this in case you mess it up. There's nothing worse than having a great drawing and then messing it up because you've done something wrong with the colouring. Okay, and of course the alternative is you take a photograph of that and print it out when you're back at school. So that is basically it for 2-point perspective. The third point, of course, these vertical lines would have gone to a point down here, but we're not going to do that because that is going to take ages.